Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. This week's guest on Conversations with Big Rich is a board member for the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. But how did he get there? As an artist, a fireman, an off-road enthusiast, off-road racer, off-road race car restorer, and off-road history keeper, Rory Ward is Ormhoff's self-proclaimed race car curator. Hello, Rory. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing surprisingly well.
Well, good.
Yeah. Let's find out more about you, and it's good to have you on here. We've been sitting on the board of directors together. I mean, I've only been on almost 2 years now. God, it's gone by fast. But I know that you've been on longer than I have, so...
Well, thanks, Rich. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Let's get started with the easiest question most times. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada, and semi-raised there till I was about 8, and then moved up to Oregon for a couple years, and then spent most of my life in Bullhead City, Arizona.
And your parents were working. What kind of work were they doing? Where they went from Vegas to Oregon?
Well, it was basically following my dad because he was a hotel manager, and he was a kind of one of the big wigs at like the Sahara, the Aladdin, a couple other of those big ones, and then they moved him up to Oregon to open up a couple casinos, couple hotels, and then actually when the Edgewater Casino in Laughlin, Nevada was being built, that's why we moved to Bullhead, because it was across the river from Laughlin, and they wanted him to open up that hotel casino.
Oh, okay. That makes sense then. Oregon to Bullhead. And where in Oregon were you?
Just south of Portland, so in Tualatin.
Okay. All right. And those early years, school, all that kind of stuff, was there, do you remember if there was a transition period that was maybe difficult, or was it pretty easy going from Vegas to Oregon?
As a kid, we had I had 3 siblings, so it wasn't really that tough, I don't think. You know what I mean? It's not like I was an only child or anything like that, so I think that might make it a little tougher. But nah, I don't really remember it being a big deal.
And same thing, how long were you guys in Oregon until you went to Bullhead?
We were only up there a couple years. My dad didn't really care for the rain, but I loved it because coming from Las Vegas, we never got any burnt rain. And then as a kid, it rained, we loved it. So
Yeah, I guess that was the biggest transition, was going from dry to moist.
Absolutely.
And because I would imagine as a kid in Las Vegas, you never really got to play in mud puddles.
No, not no. Just play, basically just out in the desert for the most part.
Right. And what kind of activities did your family do, and did they carry over from Vegas to Oregon and then Bullhead, or did things change? Do you remember?
Well, in Vegas, that's actually where the off-road bug hit, but not really as hard until we moved out of Vegas because I'm a second generation racer, off-road racer. My dad used to race in the early 70s to mid to late 70s. And then that's about when I think we moved in like 78, moved up to Oregon, and then we came back. We moved into Bullhead around early January of 1980.
Okay.
And yeah, just, playing out in the desert a little bit and watching him race and not really paying attention to it as much. But when we went up to Oregon, I remember being away from it. My dad would keep getting Hot VWs magazines, and I would always look up all the races in the magazines and figured, I kind of miss that, even at 8 to 10 years old.
Right. I can understand that. Yeah, Hot VWs was my go-to magazine. I had a 54 Bug when I was my first car.
Yeah, mine was a 68 Volkswagen.
There you go.
Baja Bug.
Okay. Yeah, mine was all streeted out, California slammer.
So yeah, mine was a piece of crap. So.
Mine looked like that. I never did get it painted.
I was lucky if it would start. I used to have to push start it about 50% of the time, but that's okay.
That's the one nice thing about Volkswagens. They were easy to do that. You didn't have to get them going very hard.
Absolutely.
So going through different schools and then getting into Bullhead, you were right around 10 years old, I guess, at Bullhead. And what was it finally like getting back into the desert? But then again, you were desert, but you had water nearby with the river.
Yeah, and we lived, probably a half a block away from the river. So I was in the river all the time. My dad had a boat, but I was usually just me and my friends would go down to like the boat launch and go swimming around there all day. We were never really, we didn't have a lot of money. So we didn't have jet skis and new dirt bikes and stuff like that. It was always, if we got a super smoking deal. I mean, I think my first dirt bike, we paid $100 for it. And that ought to tell you something.
Right. And did you have a favorite subject while you were going, as you got older in school?
I'd say when I got older, I didn't, probably like any teenage kid, didn't care too much for school. I wasn't that good at it. I was a C student my whole life. Never was an A, B guy. I think when I got into high school, I think what it interested me the most was probably like we had a drafting class. So I really enjoyed doing that. And I thought that's probably where I was going to end up doing, is designing houses or designing something.
Right.
But that probably, and art. I always drew, and drew race cars and anything with four wheels for the most part. That was just for fun.
Right. I did a little research on you, and on your website it says that in 7th and 8th grade algebra class, you sat in the back and that's where you got your art, or your art time was.
Well, yeah, and basically what it was I get bored really easy, and even if I tried concentrating on algebra, I'm like, okay, I'm not, I can't draw. I've got to pay attention in class and get a good grade and blah 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 blah. And next thing you know, instead of doing math problems and listening to the teacher, I'd be drawn a race car, and I'm still friends with my algebra teacher.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. I mean, that goes into a NORA race if we're going to talk about that later, but I can get into that later. But yeah, I've known him for years. We have a good friendship. He's probably close to 80 years old now, and super nice guy, and he's really into off-road himself. So yeah, good times.
That's great. And I guess, being in those desert climate, that really does help with the off-road addiction.
Oh yeah. I mean, I could jump on my motorcycle and just, at 12, 13, 14 years old and just go right out to the desert and take the side roads and everything. And the cops around here were pretty good. As long as we weren't being jerks and doing wheelies up and down the road, they just let us go for the most part until we got to where we were going. So, yeah, there was nothing like taking your dirt bike out and going out for a ride for a couple hours,
Right.
Even if it was a piece of crap KD 100. So
you said you were one of 4 children?
yes.
And
I was the youngest.
Oh, you were the youngest. And what was the mix?
2 girls, 2 boys. So I was the youngest. I had an older brother, and then oldest sister, and then my brother was second oldest, and my other sister's third oldest.
Oh, so you were like every other one.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And did you? I know that in some family dynamics, I'm an only child, so I was always watching the family dynamics. It always seemed like the youngest child was probably had the loosest reins when it come to parents, because they'd already been through 3 others in your case. So were you? Did you have a little bit, longer leash than maybe your brothers and sisters?
I definitely did, but I was also probably, the straightest arrow when it came, because you get to see your siblings getting in trouble for stupid crap. You tend to kind of stay away from stupid crap, I mean, I did get into trouble, but nothing that's too far-fetched for a normal teenager. You know what I mean? Just the normal kind of trouble you would get in as a teenager. But I never got into, doing stuff that I shouldn't be doing for sure,
So no mugshot?
Nope.
Okay.
Never got a mugshot.
That's been my goal in life.
Yeah, that's, and well, it's, and I'm in the fire service now, so the last thing you want to do is
get a mugshot,
because you get a mugshot, you don't have a career anymore. So,
right.
That keeps you. You think it's funny. You think a lot when you're doing pretty decent, and you want to stay on that straight and narrow. You have to talk to yourself quite a bit and saying, this probably isn't a good idea. I should probably not do this.
So
I've had a lot.
So you had that the good angel on your shoulder.
Yeah, and I usually listen to that one more than the other side. So
that's good. That's a lot better than a lot of us. I can't always say that I always listen to the good side. I guess I never got that mugshot because I was just either a little smarter or a little quicker reaction to a situation. So I I never got caught doing anything. I never did anything super bad anyway, but still there's a couple things that could have led to probably a mugshot.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I was no angel, but by no means. So,
right. So then you're going through school. You're enjoying art. Did they have auto shop classes and stuff at the schools, the high school you went to?
Not real. I think they were just phasing auto shop out, and it from a couple of the guys that were in that auto shop, they didn't like it because there was a lot of stuff that it just it didn't seem like it pertained to them very well. And I don't know how to explain that because I wasn't in there, but it was kind of like art class. I had art class and I absolutely hated it because it just didn't seem like it was helping me, which I'm sure it was at some point. But you were doing the same thing, like, hey, draw a chair. Here's the chair, draw a chair, and it's got a coat on it. And so we seem to do that 5 or 6 times a year. And I'm like, why are we doing this? I'd rather do something else. So I think that's how the auto shop probably would have been for me. I would have been thinking of something else. But I also worked in my uncle's repair shop, but I didn't do any repairs. I was more like cleaning up this and cleaning up that, but I did learn stuff. So it was, and everything I owned was junk. So I was constantly working on my own stuff, which helped out a lot, farther on down the road.
Right. Yeah, I can remember one of the first books that I went out and bought was the Volkswagen complete, the complete idiot guide for Volkswagen owners or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think my dad had one of those original books the first time they were done, and I think he had that when he had his race car in the 70s.
Right.
So, yeah, and I have one now, but it's like the updated version,
So then you're doing your art, you get into you're in high school. You at some point you started drawing race cars, and then how did that become kind of a business or part of your lifestyle?
Well, that's probably when I was really getting deep into off-road racing, going to I finally turned 16, so I could actually drive to some of the closer races and, just start getting closer to the racers. Maybe, go to tech inspection. Usually we wouldn't go to tech inspection, with my dad and stuff. We'd just go the day of the race. So when I was 16, I was able to go a day before, get up and look at the cars and see the drivers and blah, 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 blah. And then probably 87, 88, I was always drawing off-road race cars. And I said, God, you know what? I'm going to get Ivan Stewart to sign this artwork for me, or Walker Evans or whatever. And then I could actually talk to him. So I thought that would be really cool. Instead of just seeing these guys, you could actually interact with them a little bit. And Walker was actually the first person I ever talked to, and he signed some artwork for me, and he was really gracious. So as soon as that happened, I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. So I'm just going to keep doing it. So I pretty much did.
And did you carry on a relationship with a lot of those guys later on or throughout or?
Oh yeah. Let me see. Ivan was kind of the one that really got me going with the artwork, business wise. Because I did some artwork I did a piece of artwork for myself and I had him sign it at the 1988 score show. And he had just won the Mint 400 in his truck, I think, or 80. Oh, it was 89. Excuse me, 89. And I've got a line of people behind me because he's signing autographs, and he's got a poster in front of him, and he's like, "What do you want me to put on this poster?" I said, "I'd rather you sign this." And then I showed him the artwork, and then he stops and he goes, "Holy moly!" and check this out. And he's got a couple Toyota execs behind him, and there's 50 people in line, and he's stopping, signing, and he's showing it to all these Toyota execs, and he's like, "Hey, would you do me a t-shirt design?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'd love to." He's like, "How much would you charge me?" I go, "Nothing." He goes, No. He goes, "Well, here's my phone number, or give me your phone number," and blah, 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 blah. So that's what started it. And then from there, I got to meet like Robbie Gordon, Rob MacCachran, Larry Ragland. And I consider those guys friends to this day. I mean, I talk to them every once in a while on the phone or whatever, you know. So I've been really fortunate to get close to my heroes, you know, and get to know what it's like on their side, to talk to them about what they do and all that good stuff. So it's really been a really cool deal for me.
I can imagine, because I mean that's a great approach, is having something. And I've looked at the work that you do, and it's phenomenal. I I I don't know how people's minds work like that. I mean, I became a photographer because I used to draw, but I did more landscapes than anything, and it ended up becoming too hard to just go out there and draw all day long somewhere. So I started taking pictures of what I wanted to draw, and then
Mm-hmm.
found out I was a better photographer than I was an artist.
See, and I would do the same thing, but I take photos of race cars so I could have, you know, the characteristics that I want. I go find a jump and then take pictures from different angles off the course, and I go through my photos after I got them done, and then I go, ooh, I like this angle, and then I draw a race car in that angle or something, you know. So I always loved off-road photography. I'm not that great at photography just because I haven't applied myself, but I enjoy taking photos and video while I'm out there.
And how did you get into being a firefighter, paramedic, and when did that get started?
Well, I guess probably in my mid 20s, I was working across the river doing like valet and bells and all that kind of stuff, and kind of had one of those coming to Jesus meetings, talking to a guy that was in his 50s doing bells, you know, taking luggage up to rooms, and you know, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been doing this for 30 years," and I'm like, I kind of like, "Oh my God, I don't want to be being a bellman for 30 years," you know what I mean? So I was like, I need to, because the problem is you find a job like that, something that pays well in tips. It's hard to get. I mean, that's a good money for a guy in his 20s, you know, and to get out of that, it's hard to do once you're deep into it, because any other job out there, you're not going to be. I mean, you might be making back then 45 grand a year, and 45 grand a year for a 20 something year old is really good money. But the jobs that you're going to have to get, because you plateau at that area, you know, at $45,000 isn't a lot of money when you're in your 50s, you
Right.
know.
Yeah, because it's
So
all. I mean, you get a base
it's
wage
all
and tips.
it's all relative, right? So I said, you know, and I started looking around, and I had a couple good friends that were firemen, and they're all, dude, you gotta, you know, come be a fireman. And starting salary was like $24,000 a year. And I was like, oh my gosh. They're all, don't worry, you know, give it a couple years, you'll get some raises, you can do some overtime, and you know. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna do it. So I put my application in, and um, I was a reserve for about 4.5 years, which, you know, you get paid junk, you know, it was like $6 an hour or something like that. You only work a couple days a week. So I had three other jobs at the time. So with being a reserve firefighter, it was four jobs. So I worked four jobs for like hmm, 4.5, 5 years,
Wow.
until I finally got my full-time position at the fire department. So I worked my butt off, you know, it wasn't easy.
Did you go to college for that? Was that part of the deal?
Well, when you did back then, you take a firefighter one, firefighter two class, and the fire department put it on. So it was a college class, but it was taught by the fire department. So I did that, and then after I got hired, within the first year, I went to paramedic school. And after my second year being there, I was a firefighter paramedic, and then a year and a half later, I was an engineer. And I kind of just stayed there. I liked being the engineer. You know, you get to drive a fire truck and you can pump the fire truck for the fires and all that other stuff. And I really enjoyed it. And I got to the point where I was thinking about being a captain, but then it was also at a point where I didn't know if I wanted to be a captain. I just said, I really enjoy being a fire or an engineer. So I kind of stayed there. Although I wish I would have pushed myself to be a captain, but it is what it is.
Right. And you're now getting close to retirement, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm a year and 13 months I got.
Okay.
So, and then I'll do something else for 10 years, but my body's getting old, and shoulder and wrist and knee and all that stuff, I don't want to, it's getting time. So.
Right. So you were born in 70, so you're 55?
I'll be 55 in April.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm 54. So
what I've noticed, and what talking to a lot of friends, right around 58, 59 is when everybody really starts to feel like, oh my God, I think I'm old.
Well, and the thing is I know I could go, we have this thing called the drop. So basically, you got 5 years, and this is a retirement plan. But if you decide to go into the drop, you've picked your retirement date 5 years from that day, as soon as you sign on the dotted line. So you're gambling with your health. If I'm like, okay, in 5 years, how do I feel about doing that physical agility every year? And I've always had no problem with it, but I'm like, do you feel like you'll be good in 5 years? And yeah, I think I'll be good in 5 years. And they go, well, how about 6 or 7? And you're like, I don't know. Because if you only get 3 years into the drop, 3 out of 5 years, there's a lot of money you're leaving on the table. So you got to go, well, I got to make sure I make this 5 years. So I kind of gave myself a couple year buffer. And yeah, so I could definitely I wish I could extend it a couple more years, to be honest with you, but I can't.
Right. Okay. And in the meantime, that whole time you've been with the fire department, you've still been doing your artwork, and you have a business that is around the artwork, correct?
Yeah, that I think 90. I mean, I'd been doing artwork ever since the Ivan Stewart thing. That was 89. So after 89, I'd go around talking to people, see if they want some artwork done. And they'd be like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I did stuff for Ivan Stewart. And then they go, oh, okay. Well, yeah, maybe. So Ivan got me my start, and that was just doing artwork. And then I started doing vending at the races, selling T-shirts. And I have to thank Rob MacCachran for that, because I did some shirts for him. And he was sick of setting up a booth, or his family setting up a booth at the races for him, because he knows everybody. So he felt bad about charging his friends to buy a T-shirt from him, right?
Right. It's always hard to do that.
Right. So one day he calls me on the phone, and he's like, hey, he goes, I got a business proposition for you. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm going to give you this box of shirts, and you can sell them at the races. You talk to Charlie Engelbart. He's in charge of tech inspection and contingency. He goes, and you can start selling these shirts at the races. I'm like, I don't have money to go buy all these shirts. He goes, hey, you pay me back whenever you want. He goes, just get these things out of my garage. I don't want to deal with it anymore. So the 1994 Parker 400 was the first time I sold T-shirts, and I sold out within like 5 hours. And I was like, wow, that's great. So Rob MacCachran pretty much got me started in the apparel business.
How many, do you remember how many T-shirts you started off with?
It wasn't that many. I mean, he gave me a box, because back then I was skimping paycheck to paycheck. I mean, just to go to a race I had to save up for 3 weeks just to have enough money to have gas money and food money and all that stuff to get down to the race and back. So I think I only had 6 dozen shirts,
Okay.
But to me that was, I was like $800, $900 or something like that is what we made. And I was like, oh my gosh, might as well been $1 million. That's what it felt like. I was like, this is great, so it just started building up from there.
When did you meet your wife, Tracy?
I met Tracy in December of 1990 in Bullhead. She was working at a clothes store, and then I started taking her to the races. Surprised she didn't run as soon as she had the chance. But yeah, we've been together for 30-something years now. So
very good, very good. And you have 2 daughters, Hannah and Lindsay? Yep.
Lindsay's my oldest. She just had a birthday. And then Hannah's our youngest. And they're doing well. They've got great jobs, and they don't have mug shots. So we're doing pretty good.
That's a good thing to say about your daughters.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be completely honest. I can't say that.
Hey, now I'm not saying that they could have had mug shots. I have no idea.
Right.
And I'd rather it stay that way.
Yeah. My daughter was just way too honest.
Yeah. Exactly.
One time, and it just snowballed.
Like I said, it doesn't mean that they don't deserve to have a mug shot. They just didn't get one.
Right. So then you're working both your first business was Desert Motorsports Designs. That was just doing the artwork. And do you sell the artwork to the drivers for their T-shirts?
Yeah, I tried to come up with a T-shirt, a name for the company. But after a couple of years, I'd go, I'm kind of limiting myself to desert racers. I didn't want somebody to go, oh, well, that guy just does desert racing stuff. I want somebody that does, my sports car or my this or that. So I was actually in the Harrah's Casino, or the Vermont Express Casino, as a bell captain, just sitting there. And it was a slow day, and behind the bell desk, and some guy came up with a members only jacket, and he goes, hey, can you hold on to this? And you give him a ticket for it and say, yeah, you can pick it up whenever. And then I started going, members only. I go, hey, how about racers only? And that's where that came up. I came up with that name for that, and then I think I even sketched the logo while I was behind the bell desk that day. So the logo that you see on my website or whatever, I actually sketched that, that font, just freehanded it, and there you go.
Nice. Very good. And I now that you brought it up, I'm going to have to ask, did you ever own a members only jacket?
I think I did at one point.
I think we all did.
I think I'm pretty sure it was probably mid-teens. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it became racers only, and then you started doing apparel. And what other kind of motorsports did you draw for?
Well, luckily for me, I met Robbie Gordon, and that's when Robbie was just the hot ticket, right? I mean, he had he raced for he did the Mustang, which was what the GTO Mustang back then, IMSA. I didn't do anything for him for IMSA, but I did his Indy car, his Winston Cup car, his Dakar vehicle, and I've done, the majority of the stuff, of course, is desert racing, because that's where my love's at. And usually if I did any kind of sports car or something like that, it had some tie to off-road racing, whether it was this guy's buddy or this guy pitted for this guy and he's got this car and blah, 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 blah. So there was some tie to off-road racing in any form of vehicle that I ever did, for the most part.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the apparel company, you're still doing racers only?
I don't do apparel. I stopped vending in 2013, and the reason was I had, I bought my first race car from Butch Dean, the trophy truck killer, with Pat Bean's old Cheneth. I bought that in like 2007, and then I started racing, and I started using the racers only apparel money for racing. So the apparel wasn't getting uh, you know the stuff that it needed to keep it going.
Right.
So I wasn't doing that great. I was still doing okay, but man, I needed to concentrate on spending the apparel money on apparel and not using it on a race car. But God, I just loved racing, so it was hard not to.
And
But
how
so
long
yeah,
have
I
you
don't
raced
do.
for?
Well, shit, I shoot. I still race. I still race today if I can. As you know, I got quite a few vintage race cars anyway, but my own cars, I haven't raced my own car since 20 I think 2016 is the last time I raced my own race car.
Okay.
Everything else, I've just been really fortunate to hook up with other people that wanted me to race with them. Ed Marin, who had the Larry Ragland car, I raced with him 2 years in a row, and we won 2 NORA races and a Mint 400. And then I raced with Mark McMillan in McAdoo in the NORA 1000 and the NORA 500. And every time I've raced with Mark, we won. So I've been really fortunate to have some really cool cars to race and historical race cars with actually some historical racers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to crawl into like Larry Ragland's Wood Stuff Chaparral, oh man, it was such a cool car. And then you get to talk to Larry, in between stages, and he's like, "Hey, how'd you like it?" "Oh my gosh, I love it." "How fast you go?" Blah 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 blah. Same thing with Mark. Both between you got Mark and Larry, and they both won the Baja 1000 overall 5 times.
Right.
And to be able to, race with those guys or in their cars that they used to race, it's a pretty cool deal. I mean, for me, it is anyway.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. I've been around and worked race teams, but I've never had the opportunity to race. I've been an event promoter since 2000. So, I mean, I've put on rock crawls, but I've never driven, an unlimited buggy. I owned Vora, Valley Off-Road Racing, after Ed Robinson, who we just inducted a couple of years ago. And I ran that for nearly 5 years, and, I never got into a race car. But
Wow.
I did go around the Prairie City racetrack with Kurt LeDuc in a stock Grand Cherokee, and we jumped it and everything. And I thought we were just going to drive around and look at the track because I was trying to get him to come race with us. And instead, we pulled out of the pits, and he was basically sidestepping it and drifting the corners and come up to the first jump, and he's not backing off at all. I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to trust somebody, I guess Kurt LeDuc is a guy to trust.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I've been fortunate to get in the passenger seat with Robbie Gordon when he went testing his old Valvoline trophy truck and his La Victoria Ranger, and Rob MacCachran in the Venable Class 8, and the who else? Simons, to sit in those trucks and have those guys throwing those things around. Man, what a rush. And you wonder why you get hooked on this sport. I'm hooked. I can't even explain how hooked I am on this sport. And it's because of opportunities like those. That's why I'm hooked. But I also put myself in the position to get there. too. There's a lot of hard work that went into it, and sometimes just being in the right place at the right time. So, but my heart's definitely in it, and I think that has a lot to do with it.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that. So let's talk about what you're not doing racing full time. You're not doing the artwork per se, but you're restoring vehicles. How did that come about?
Well, it started. I built a 4-seater to get me into the desert in the 2000s, and the artwork is what built that 4-seater. I did artwork for a lot of companies, and they just traded me product. So I built my 4-seater on artwork, and then in 2006, I sold the 4-seater, and I bought the trophy truck killer that needed to be rebuilt. So that would almost be my first restoration, although it wasn't really a restoration, but it kind of was, because we left everything pretty much the way it was, except for the motor, because I couldn't afford a flat 6 Porsche motor, because that's about 30 grand by itself.
Right.
But everybody knew, oh, that's the trophy truck killer. That's Pat Dean's old Cheneth, and that's about the same time, I raced it for a couple years. I had it for a couple years. And then in 2009, I was getting ready. I go, you know what? I need to get into a class, because I had to race sportsman. That's all there was. There wasn't a vintage class. It was sportsman, or you can go race class 1 unlimited. And I wasn't going to race class 1 unlimited in a 20-year-old car, because now you're just in the way.
Right.
So, I put it up for sale, and that's about the same time that Nora came out. And Mark Post wanted to buy the car. And he goes, I want to buy that car because I used to race against it in class 1, and I know what that car is capable of. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, wow, that's a good idea. But at the time, I was thinking about something else. So sold it to him, and then bought me like a class 12 car. But then I went down to Nora with Jeff Furrier. And because I really wanted to look at some of these old cars that I'd always seen in the magazines and stuff, like the Silver Bullet. Well, we called it the Silver Bullet, but the Malcolm Smith Bud Feldkamp ISS Funko.
Okay.
Or SS2, whatever. And then Parnelli was going to be there, and Rod Hall was going to be driving something. I'm like, that's my era. So I want to go down there. Well, me and Jeff, we got bit by the bug, and then that's when we started the Mark Stahl Cheneth, because he said, hey, I know where the car's at. And I'm like, that thing was on the cover of Hot VWs in like 79. He's like, yeah. So that's where my racing, even though I had raced sportsmen and the Baja 1000 and the Mint and Laughlin and all this stuff, we had a lot of success. It was still the sportsman class, and all your buddies make fun of you, but I didn't really care. But that's when we got into the vintage racing, and there was just something about the vintage racing, and it bit me hard. So I was like, I'm gonna kind of stick with this. This is fun, because it was the hunt to try and find parts and the story behind the car, and then we got a hold of Mark Stahl, and we were able to put the pieces together, and it was such a fun deal. Then I just kept going with that.
Nice. And so how many cars have you restored? And are you restoring them for yourself or for other people?
The only one I restored that I knew wasn't going to be for me, even though it was my car until I sold it to him, was the Ivan Stewart Modern Motors Cheneth 1000. I bought the chassis from Lynn Cheneth, because I was going to do I had an idea for a vintage car, and I go, maybe I'll build this car and then I'll go race it at some of these races. And then when I got the car home, I realized that the chassis, the top of the chassis was a lot higher than like the Mark Stahl car, because the Cheneth 1000s had a really cool look to them. I always liked the Cheneth 1000s. But after I put the body on it and started looking at it, I'm like, God, this cage is really high. It doesn't, I mean, to me, it didn't look right. So I started talking to Lynn Cheneth about it. And he goes, oh, that must be one of those high cages. I go, high cage? He goes, yeah. He goes, we probably built like 5 high cages. He goes, and Ivan Stewart's was one of them because Ivan was so tall and so was Johnny Johnson. And those two raced that car a couple times. And he goes, we had to cut the top off of it and make it a little higher so their heads would fit. And I said, oh, I go, well, would you be interested in like a Modern Motors tribute car? And he said, absolutely. And it was like a handshake deal. He didn't give me any money, didn't do this, didn't do that. So I built that car. And as soon as I was done with it, sent me a check, and that was his. So that was the only one I've ever done like that. Everything else I bought and built because I wanted to, because I thought it was cool. And so nothing other was built and sold like that Cheneth was for Lynn Cheneth.
Okay. And how many cars do you think you've done now?
Well, starting with the Pat Dean car. So there's the Trophy Truck Killer. Then me and Jeff Furrier did the Mark Stahl Cheneth 1000. Then I did the Mickey Thompson Challenger 4. Then the Dirt Tricks 252 car. And then, and then the Ivan Stewart Modern Motors car. And then we did the Mickey Thompson Challenger 3. We just did. And then now I'm working on the McMillan High Jumper, their very first car that they ever raced back in 1976. We call it the bucket list high jumper because that was their plan. They were going to race it one time at the Baja 1000 and then say, okay, what else can we do now? And look where they're at now. And then I've got Ivan Stewart's Toyota that I'm still kind of working on. It's been a long, drawn-out process. And I also have one of the stadium trucks, although the stadium truck I'm probably not going to do. I bought it more for spare parts for the Ivan Stewart truck because a lot of the parts on the stadium truck actually fit on this truck because 4 trucks were built at the same time. They're just 2 of them were desert cars and 2 of them were stadium cars, but all the suspension was the same, the trannies, all that stuff, the shocks. So I kind of bought that one for that. And then recently, me and my buddy Cody Swanee, we're partners actually on the McMillan High Jumper, and we bought the Miller American Oldsmobile.
Oh, really?
And yes, so that one's sitting in Cody's shop here in Kingman, and we're going to tackle that. But I got to get the Ivan Stewart truck done first. And Cody's been really good to me. I mean, and that's another guy that's, hey, you want to come race with me? I race, he let me race with him in his pro truck in 2017 and 2018 at the Baja 1000. And then I was lucky enough in 2022, he bought a trophy truck and he said, hey, you want to come race with me at the Baja 1000 in the trophy truck? And I'm like, yeah, twist my arm. Yeah, of course I do, So he's been they say partnerships are probably not the best thing to do because, guys have different expectations and stuff like that. But I've done 2 partnerships, one with Jeff Furrier, and that one worked out. It worked out really well. And the other one has been with Cody Swanee. And actually, me and Cody Swanee also own the Challenger 3, which is the short course version of the V8 Mickey Thompson car. Because I have Challenger 4, which is mine. That's the desert car, and Challenger 3 is the short course car. So
nice.
We've got that partnership going. So it's actually been really good. But we'd like to sell some cars now, though. So we can see if we can sell some.
And like the McMillan and the 2 Mickey Thompson cars.
Well, yeah. I need to sell the Mickey Thompson car, my car at least, but I'm sure me and Cody would like to sell the other one too, because we'd like to sell them as a pair. We'd like to get some collector to buy them. For one, that's going to get me to restore, the Ivan Stewart truck. Give me some money to restore the Ivan Stewart truck, and then we can get going on the Oldsmobile. And the high jumper, we don't know yet. We don't know what we're going to do with that. That might be one of those cars that it's going to be like a parade car. It's runs and drives and everything, but that'll be a fun little car to like take to the Mint 400 and go do the parade in it, and bring it to some races or some off-road expos or something like that. And it's a cool little car. It really is. So who knows? Of course, everything's for sale, right? But
I would say that for most people, everything's for sale. I'm one of those that I have a hard time getting rid of anything. And, I look back on the list of cars that I've had, and almost every single one I've ever had, I wish I still had.
Yeah, but then there'd be cars that you wouldn't have because you didn't get rid of it. So
Right.
That's how I look at it. Like everybody tells me, how are you going to be able to get rid of that Mickey Thompson, that car that, you rebuilt and you raced it and you won, and how can you just get rid of that? And I'm like, pretty easy. So, somebody just comes up and hands me some money and then it's gone. It's the cool thing is my name's still attached to it. I did what I wanted. I restored that thing. I bring it back to life. We put Mickey Thompson's name back in the public eye again, which he doesn't get enough, accolades for what he did for the desert racing community. A lot. I mean, you ask people today, that new guys, that kids, who's Mickey Thompson? They're like, I don't know. He makes tires or something, doesn't he? It's like, oh my God, it's so much more than that. You guys don't know your history. So that's one of the reasons I like bringing these old cars back, because then they start asking you questions and they can start learning a little bit more about this sport that we love,
Right. So true. So let's go into that history part of all this. You're on the board of directors for the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. How long have you been on the board of directors?
I think I'm going on 6 years. I'm pretty sure I think it's 6 years. And I think Bob Ham was the one who threw my name in the mix when they were looking for some more board members. And, the board for Ormhoff, I look at it this way. We've got, what do we got? 15 people, maybe a little more now. I think we expanded a little bit, right?
Yes.
And we need a little bit of everybody. We need guys that know the history, and then guys that know how to do the marketing, and then guys that know how to get the money, and then we need salesmen. We need, just all these different facets. And I think that's my forte. My forte is basically the history. I can help with the history of off-road. I can help, I'm kind of the curator for all these off-road cars, and I absolutely love it. But they don't necessarily come to me when they're like, hey, we need to get some money from a sponsor, for Ormhoff. I'm like, well, I'm not your guy. Right. You know what I mean? Actually, I probably scare people away. So I tell when they start talking about, hey, we need to go for, silent auction items and stuff like that, I'm like, well, I'm not necessarily your guy on this. You know what I mean? I do this. That's what these people are really good at. And we have a really good lineup at Ormhoff. And I wish more people would sign up and understand what it is that we're doing. And we don't get paid. None of us get paid.
Correct.
We do this for the love of the sport. And, there's, the off-road community, there's a lot of money being made out there. And it's for the history of this, we're trying to keep the history going. So it'd be nice that these companies, and a lot of them do, like BF Goodrich and Fox and all these other companies that, donate and become series sponsors or gold members or all that kind of stuff. It really helps. So we'd like to see more of it. Plus, we'd like to see more people get on as members, just regular members, because your $50, it helps with all kinds of stuff. I mean, Barbara Rainey put every issue of Dusty Times on online, so you could look at any issue of Dusty Times that you want to at your fingertips, instead of digging through old boxes and trying to find the right issue to look at something.
Right.
So there's a lot of, and that's a lot of history at your fingertips that normal people don't have access to, but it costs money. That kind of stuff costs money. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to,
just the
preserve
just the upkeep of the
everything.
vehicles that we have under our care, and moving them around from location to location, and the insurance on those vehicles. There's the everything that, trapping that history, and then making it available to the general public is not only time but money.
Oh, absolutely. And I can tell you from sitting in on some of these meetings that, and I'm not gonna mention some names, even though I should, but there's guys that are on our board that something's come up, and they're like, hey, I think we were gonna give money a couple years ago to one of these organizations, and we had a certain amount of money allocated for that. And we were going to do one of those big checks, you know what I mean? And we were going to present it to them. And somebody on the board said, that money just doesn't seem like it's enough. It's almost embarrassing to put that much money on a big check and try and promote it. So I'm going to throw in X amount of dollars to put, so that number's a lot bigger on that check. And that guy didn't have to do that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he knew what he was doing, and he was right. And I can tell you, there's been more than a few people on that board that have, went above and beyond what they're supposed to do. Whether setting up a booth at an event, and they're asking, Barbara's usually, hey, give me your expenditures for that race, and you're like, no, don't worry about it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's me.
I know. Yeah. Me, and there's been a few of us that there's more. I'd say I bet you everybody on the board has done that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because we could all be, oh yeah, it's $300 or $1,500 or this, that, and we're like, no, that's how we give back. You know what I mean? We do it out of the goodness of our hearts, and we want this thing to succeed. And hey, I'm going anyway. I'd be more than happy to do it. So that's the kind of people we have at Ormhoff right now, and I hope it stays that way.
I think it will. We've with the addition of board members just since I came on, and then the list of people that we have targeted for the future, which some of them know about it, some of them don't know. That are there's some of the people on the board that can write checks, and then there's some of them that are the worker bees, that can get out there and do the work. And I'm one of those. I can't write the big checks, but I can sure get out to the events and promote and help expand that base and knowledge of it, and try to capture more of that history. And that's you need both of those on a board of directors like we have.
Absolutely, and I'm the same way. I don't have the checkbook to be writing checks to Ormhoff, but what I make up for is doing what you say. Being the worker bee, going around doing this and going around doing that, and we're not making paychecks, and we're also not drawing from that to say, hey, it was $1,700 for fuel to go to Florida and back, and blah 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 to do this and do that and yada yada. We're like, no, we got it.
Yeah,
we'll handle it. So
exactly. Yeah. So the you feel you're the curator, and that's what I believe. That you're the curator of those vehicles that are in our care.
Self-proclaimed. Yes.
That's okay. We all have that. I'm, it's my connections in the 4-wheel drive side of the industry, and hopefully what I can bring, being that salesman at events, especially the 4-wheel drive side. That's where, I'm looking at the expansion of Ormhoff and what we bring to the table to the off-road industry is capturing and getting more of the four-wheel drive side of the industry involved.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and you got people like Gary Hogley that has he's been a great asset, and he's only been on for I believe a year. He's one of those guys that, man, he knows so many people, and he can get, that guy could sell ice to an Eskimo. I'm telling you, he's been so good for Ormhoff. He gets us all kinds of stuff for the silent auctions and all that stuff, and like what you do for the four-wheel drive stuff. He's like the buggy guy, and he gets all those smaller companies interested in helping out, and he almost forces them sometimes. It's funny. He's that guy knows what he's doing.
Good guy. Yeah, we came on at the same time. It was
yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's right.
So where do you see yourself doing after retirement?
Well, I'm just retiring from the fire department. I can't retire at 55 years old. I'm going to have to do something for another 10 years or something. But I see myself definitely still restoring old race cars. I just love it. I mean, it's probably not the most lucrative retirement job, because I have built quite a few cars, and I haven't sold that many of them. So, and I keep accruing them. But you know what? I just love it. It's so much fun to put these old cars together, and I put the stories out there on Race Desert and everywhere else, and I get so many people private emailing me or whatever and go, "Hey, I got this part. This might work great on that." You know what I mean? Oh, great. Whatever. And asking me about the history of this or the history of that. And so I love doing it. I absolutely 100% love doing it.
Excellent.
And that's what I'll be doing. I'll, for the at least, well, probably longer than 10 years, or as long as my body will let me, I'll probably always be restoring some old off-road race car or something. But I also need something that pays the bills. So
right. There you go. So one of the things that I think that would be good with Ormhoff is the establishment of an actual endowment fund, or where racers that maybe aren't racing, but their whole life has been spent racing, and when they move on up to the blue skies, we'll leave something to Ormhoff to help us succeed in the future. And an endowment fund like that would be, I think, is something that will be explored shortly. So,
yeah, and we've been fortunate enough. Rod Hall and Dick Landfield, those guys left us with some money to help Ormhoff, and what I think what they're the big plan at some point would be to have a museum of our own. And I think Mark McMillan's even said, we have the money to build the museum, but we don't have the money to keep it going. So Mark's a smart dude. So if Mark says, we're not quite ready for something like that. So we just have to keep going and keep building this thing. And once it can sustain itself, then we got that museum. And we've accrued some great vehicles. Actually, it's Cameron Theriot's birthday today. He's 70 years old. And Cameron Theriot has donated the Scoop Vessels Class 8 truck from I think he won the 76 Baja 1000 in it, or Baja 500. And then the BFG Blazer. He donated both of those vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, those two vehicles are, and he restored them running whole 9 yards. They're great vehicles. And then, we've had Mark Fusting donated another Class A truck. Ed Martin donated the wood stuff, Larry Raglan car. We got the Chevy Nova. We got the Rod Hall Hummer. We've got some great vehicles, and we keep getting a few more here and there. So one of these days, if we do get a museum, it's going to be a fantastic museum with some really, really cool vehicles. And to see all those vehicles all in one place would definitely be something to come see. I know that, right now we've got vehicles spread out, a couple in Nebraska. We had one in Daytona. We had some in Las Vegas. We had some in California. So we've got a little bit sprinkled out everywhere for right now, just to kind of keep those vehicles in rotation and moving around. And I can tell you those museums are really happy to have those vehicles. But hopefully one day we'll have our own.
I agree. There's a, is Ormhoff the keeper of the history? Are we just are we the curators for the history, or are we just those that celebrate the history? And I think both, myself. And, there's so much, there's so many items out there besides the cars that mean so much to the sport, whether it's trophies or body panels or photo collections or movies and videos and all the stuff that's that is made, that has come about because of the sport of off-road. And I would love to see us in a position someday, or Ormhoff in a position someday, to have a place, but also to be able to maintain it and have it. I don't know if you've ever been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or to like the NHRA, Museum West down there in Pomona. But, it's not just cars. It's also, things that people used, or, whether it's fire suits or helmets or, innovations like, the first of the fuel, refueling tanks, those kind of things that really made a big difference.
Right.
And in rock crawling, which is part of the off-road community, John Nelson, who just got brought in, the car Tiny, it was truly the first out of the box buggy, and it redid the sport of rock crawling. And, a car like that,
absolutely.
it's, there's just so many things out there that need to be, need to be preserved so that people understand where the sport came from.
Well, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And I can tell you, I think we have three vehicles up at the Museum of American Speed in Nebraska. And I just went for the first time in August of this past year, and talk about one of those things. You've been to the SEMA show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can't just spend one day at SEMA because you're not going to see everything. Well, that's pretty much the Museum of American Speed. It is. If Ormhoff was to have a museum, that's what you go back to Nebraska and see how they did it, and you say, okay, here's the template. This is how you do it. That place is amazing. And if we could have something like that, and I'm pro desert racing, so a lot of the stuff you hear from me is pro desert racing, right? But there's a lot of other forms of stuff that like you're talking about, the Ultra 4 kind of stuff, or just the adventure part of it, or there's so many different forms in off-road for the Off-Road Hall of Fame. And I'm just a desert racing guy, so that's what I talk about. But if you could get a museum like the American Speed Museum in Nebraska and just do for that off-road, it would be an amazing place to go visit. And that way you could see all of the facets of off-road. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That would be something, if we're going to base a museum off of something, I would probably highly recommend people to go check that place out and see the history that's in there. And it's not just the cars, it's the displays. I mean, go check their website out. Google it.
Not only that, I'm going to go there this year. I'm making a trip to Kansas City for more, which is an off-road expo, Missouri off-road expo, but it's in Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm gonna make that side trip and get to that Museum of American Speed in Nebraska. I'm gonna make that a side trip.
Yeah, don't put a couple hours aside. It's not enough. You need a full day in there.
Okay,
at least a full day. I'm telling you, it's 2 stories. It's amazing. So yeah.
Now you got me all excited.
you should be.
I want to see this.
And that's the good thing about what we're doing with our cars. I mean, if we can't have our own museum, we're going to put our cars in places that they can showcase it, and they can definitely showcase some stuff. And I've even told them, hey, if you guys need some memorabilia to go in with this stuff, you let us know. We'll be more than happy to supply you guys with this stuff. Because most of their vehicles don't have displays with them because they're still building and building and building. So they just opened up a brand new wing. I don't know, it was 15,000 square feet or some crazy number.
Wow.
Or 50,000 square feet. I don't know what it was, but so they're slowly building displays for these vehicles. So
yeah, I've been to a lot of different types of museums. And Hall of Fames, and that's one of the things that I've always looked at is how everything is displayed and presented, and it just like there's a towing museum and Hall of Fame in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is incredible, and there's in Phoenix what would be Mesa, there's the fire truck history museum, which is another place that's absolutely incredible, with all the displays and everything, interactive things to do and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm definitely gonna get to the American Museum of American Speed. Cool.
Yeah, you need to, and so does everybody else. So
okay, everybody put that on your bucket list,
and be a member of Ormhoff too.
Yes, be a member of Ormhoff. It's easy to become a member. Just go to ormhoff.org.
Absolutely.
Well, Rory, I want to say thank you so much for spending this Saturday afternoon with me, and I get to know you a little better. I mean, we talk, it's at some of our meetings, and but we've never really had it. We don't have a chance to converse like this at those meetings. So it's good to know more about you.
Well, thank you very much, Rich. I appreciate it, and I love the podcast. I listen to it all the time, so it was nice to be on it.
Well, great, and thank you. And say hello to your wife and girls, and hopefully I get to meet them someday.
You got it, buddy. We'll see. We'll see you at the next event.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.